It has been nearly 2 months since CBS 6 reported that the state's official government watchdog agency was investigating the way the Virginia Parole Board had handled a number of recent cases. That probe was launched following the controversial decision to grant parole to Vincent Lamont Martin, who is serving a life sentence for killing a Richmond police officer in 1979.
3 years ago, the board granted parole to another inmate who had been sentenced to life in prison. Now, police in 2 different parts of Virginia say that man has returned to a life of crime. In tonight's Problem Solvers investigation, crime insider John Burkett examines another parole decision that some say was a mistake.
Virginia Parole Board. The mission is spelled out right on its website: to grant parole to those offenders whose release is compatible with public safety. But in recent months, a number of decisions made by the board have been scrutinized, with some saying that public safety concerns have been ignored.
They shouldn't let us know that this was taking place, and they never did.
Last month, CBS 6 was first to report that the state's official government watchdog agency, the Office of the State Inspector General, had launched an investigation into the board's handling of several cases.
We want to make sure in the future the parole board, has a process in place, follows their procedures, and we'll take a look at that when OSIC completes their investigation.
Most notably, that of Vincent Lamont Martin. He had been serving a life sentence for the murder of Richmond patrolman Michael Connors, who was shot multiple times in the head near the VCU campus in November of 1979. But earlier this year, 4 out of 5 members of the parole board voted to set Martin free. That led to criticism from Connors' family, law enforcement, and even Richmond's Commonwealth's attorney, who asked the board to reconsider and rescind Martin's release. That release was delayed twice, but Martin was ultimately let go earlier this month.
The parole board has sole discretion with respect to parole in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Just 1 year before the board granted his release, Martin was denied parole for reasons that included his extensive criminal record and a history of violence. Circumstances similar to the case of Kareem Aziz Muhammad. Serving a life sentence for robbery and use of a firearm, Muhammad went before the board in 2016 but was denied parole. Among the reasons given, a history of violence, the serious nature and circumstances of his offenses, and a record of institutional infractions that indicated a disregard for rules and that he was not ready to conform to society. So Muhammad remained behind bars until the very next year when the board did an about-face and granted him parole. Now, according to police and prosecutors in 2 different parts of Virginia, Muhammad has returned to a life of crime.
And now here we are with another person who's got a history of violent felonies. They've been paroled and they're not even assigned a parole officer? Something's wrong.
On April 11th, investigators say Muhammad robbed Stewart's grocery store in the Lenexa section of New Kent County. He was arrested 3 days later, but was eventually released on bail. Then, on June 20th, police in Newport News say he committed a series of crimes that endangered the lives of several people, including children. According to police, Muhammad forced his way into a woman's home while wielding a knife, demanding money and personal items. There were children inside at the time. Investigators say he then fled the scene and led police on a chase while his own child was inside the car with him. Police say it ended when Muhammad crashed into a trooper's vehicle, then assaulted an officer before being taken into custody. His child was taken to the hospital to be checked for injuries. Between the incidents in New Kent and Newport News, Kareem Aziz Muhammad faces 9 criminal charges, including 5 felonies.
He should have been back in jail until this first felony was adjudicated, not 3 months later after he's done 4 or 5 other ones that hurt people.
A charge like robbery is a very serious felony offense. It's a crime against a person, and normally you'd be held without bond for a charge like that. These days, we've got COVID in the jails and that sort of thing, so things are a little bit different.
CBS 6 legal analyst Todd Stone says it's unlikely that Muhammad will get a bond again.
Yeah, I think it'd be virtually impossible for him to get a bond now. So he was out on a bond on a violent felony and then is alleged to have committed a new violent felony while on bond for the last one. I can't imagine a scenario where a judge would give him a bond.
Which leaves some wondering why the parole board chose to release Muhammad when they themselves had voiced concerns something like this might happen.
I'm still waiting to see the Inspector General's report that was requested by Mike Connors' family and a bunch of other people when Martin got released. And then when we started looking into that, we find the case in Roanoke, the case down in Bedford, the case in Virginia Beach. All these were people that are violent felons. I don't mean somebody that wrote a bad check. These are people that have killed people, have done armed robberies and shot people, and now all of a sudden all of them are good to go.
When Muhammad was released, the state parole board chair was Adrian Bennett. As for that OIG report, multiple crime insider sources tell me it is yet to come across the desk of Governor Ralph Northam or Secretary of Public Safety Brian Moran. Working for you tonight, John Burkett, CBS 6 News.